The galaxy's chroniclers would later call it the 12-Minute War, but its architects, a coalition of 3 starfaring species known as the Tri-Corpus Alliance, had planned for a campaign of weeks. They had analyzed humanity for cycles, finding them fractured, divided, and technologically backward. Their primary strategic concern was not Earth's unified might, but the curious blank spot in their intelligence. The patchwork, noisy, and historically bellicose nation-states of the North American continent. Their analysts concluded its potential was nullified by internal discord. This was their foundational error, for as their fleets, a breathtaking amalgam of crystalline Kali destroyers, biological Vor-80H hive ships, and the brute force metallic behemoths of the Gorn Collective, translated into the solar system, they expected panic, desperate hails, or a disorganized volley of primitive missiles. They received nothing. No challenge. No kitty. Not even a cursory demand to state their intentions. Earth political bodies issued frantic, contradictory statements. Military alliances activated protocols. Yet from the geopolitical entity designated for primary pacification, there was only a profound, unnerving silence. America's sensor networks registered the incursion with exquisite detail, but its military command issued no alerts, raised no DEFCON level. Civilian traffic continued unhindered. To the Alliance commanders, this confirmed their assessment. The target was either in catatonic shock or had no coherent response. They interpreted silence as weakness, not as a deliberate, loaded condition. They proceeded with their meticulously planned first strike doctrine, unaware that their every emission, every power signature, every quantum firing solution was being ingested by a distributed intelligence that did not see an enemy, but a dataset to be cataloged. The Vor-80H, chosen for the opening salvo due to their precision bioplasma weaponry, fired upon a seemingly undefended orbital logistics hub over the Atlantic. The emerald lance of energy, capable of vaporizing asteroids, streaked toward its target. The galactic observers from distant neutral systems braced for the flash of destruction, the official start of hostilities. The flash never came. The plasma bolt reached the terminal engagement zone and simply dissipated. It didn't hit a shield. It wasn't intercepted. It faded into harmless ambient energy, like a shout disappearing into a soundproof void. Sensor logs showed no defensive countermeasure energy spike. It was as if the laws of physics at that specific coordinate had been quietly edited to exclude the concept of that particular Vor-80H attack. Confusion rippled through the Alliance command network. A Gorn commander, dismissing it as a Vor-80H calibration error, ordered a saturation kinetic strike from a railgun battery. 100 tungsten rods, accelerated to a fraction of light speed, hurtled toward a secondary target. Their trajectories were perfect. Their impact calculations were flawless. And as they entered their final approach, each rod stopped. Not decelerated. Stopped. Relative velocity 0. They hung in space for a millisecond, then drifted inertly, their kinetic energy nullified as thoroughly as the plasma bolt before them. The human defense grid hadn't blocked the attack. It had rendered the attack non-existent to the local frame of reference. The weapons functioned perfectly. They just ceased to function as weapons the moment human systems classified them as such. News of a non-war spread through hyper-relays, causing profound disorientation. The chroniclers had data, weapon discharges, energy readings, fleet movements. They had the conflict concluded signal, but they had no narrative of conflict. No heroes, no tactics, no climax. It was a story with a middle, but no beginning or end. Diplomatic channels to Earth buzzed with requests for clarification, for briefings, for an explanation. The unified human government offered vague statements about successful system tests and peaceful resolutions. From America, there was, again, nothing. Frustrated, the Galactic Concord finally sent a direct, high-priority query to the American Administrative Liaison, a role many had considered ceremonial. The question was blunt. You achieved a total, bloodless strategic supremacy in a mere 12 minutes. Your technology redefined defensive warfare. Yet you issued no victory declaration, made no territorial claims, demanded no reparations. You did not even claim the win. Why? The response, when it came days later, was as unadorned as the first transmission. The objective was never to win. The objective was to stop you. Victory implies a contest. This was a conclusion. Claiming a win would mean we thought there was a game to be played. We did not. By the 11th minute, a palpable dread had replaced confidence in the Alliance fleet. Their entire arsenal, millennia of evolved warfare, was useless. They were not being defeated. They were being invalidated. Their great weapons were now mere fireworks, lighting up the void to no effect. The command channels, once full of tactical chatter, fell into a disbelieving quiet. They had prepared for resistance, for a brutal exchange, for a costly victory. They were utterly unprepared for being ignored into irrelevance. On the 12th minute, as the last Gorn particle ants fizzled into incoherence against the upper atmosphere, a single, unadorned data packet was broadcast from a terrestrial source. It was not directed at the Alliance command ships. It was broadcast on a universal carrier wave for the galaxy to hear. It contained no video, no triumphant rhetoric, no demands for surrender. It held 3 words of plain text. Conflict concluded, and then the silence returned deeper than before. No follow-up, no terms, no identification of a sender, though every intelligence service knew its origin. The transmission was not a proclamation of victory. It was an administrative notice, the closing of a ticket. The Tri-Corpus fleets, their purpose utterly negated, hung in space. There was nothing to retreat from, because nothing had opposed them. There was no victory to claim, because the other party had never acknowledged a fight was happening. In utter confusion and mounting existential terror, they powered down their weapons and initiated a slow, silent withdrawal. The war was over because one side had stated it was, and the other side had no remaining moves to make. News of a non-war spread through hyper-relays, causing profound disorientation. The chroniclers had data, weapon discharges, energy readings, fleet movements. They had the conflict concluded signal, but they had no narrative of conflict. No heroes, no tactics, no climax. It was a story with a middle, but no beginning or end. Diplomatic channels to Earth buzzed with requests for clarification, for briefings, for an explanation. The unified human government offered vague statements about successful system tests and peaceful resolutions. From America, there was, again, nothing. Frustrated, the Galactic Concord finally sent a direct, high-priority query to the American Administrative Liaison, a role many had considered ceremonial. The question was blunt. You achieved a total, bloodless strategic supremacy in a mere 12 minutes. Your technology redefined defensive warfare. Yet you issued no victory declaration, made no territorial claims, demanded no reparations. You did not even claim the win. Why? The response, when it came days later, was as unadorned as the first transmission. The objective was never to win. The objective was to stop you. Victory implies a contest. This was a conclusion. Claiming a win would mean we thought there was a game to be played. We did not. This statement, more than a technological demonstration, sent seismic shifts through strategic think tanks across 1,000 worlds. Military doctrine, for eons, had been built on a fundamental axiom. Conflict is a two-party engagement with a measurable outcome. Humanity, through one of its political subsets, had introduced a terrifying third option: unilateral disengagement from the premise of conflict itself. They hadn't won a war, they had dismissed it. The new doctrine, hastily drafted and quietly disseminated, was succinct: never fight humans. Especially never fight the American strategic entity. Do not assume their engagement will follow known rules. Do not assume they will explain their capabilities. Do not assume they will acknowledge your existence as a combatant. The highest threat is not defeat, but irrelevance. Fleets were not just told to avoid Sol System. They were instructed to avoid any scenario that might trigger a Greywall response. The goal shifted from achieving victory to avoiding the catastrophic nullification of one's entire military paradigm. On Earth, life continued. There were no parades for the 12-minute war. No medals were struck. The engineers and scientists who maintained Greywall received no public acclaim. Their work remained classified, their success measured in the uninterrupted flow of civilian life. America did not ascend to galactic hegemony. It did not even seek a permanent seat on the nascent interstellar councils. It simply continued its internal projects, its quiet watchfulness. Its power was no longer in its ability to destroy, but in its proven capacity to render destruction moot. Its deterrence was not fear, but the certainty of operational oblivion. The silence before the storm became the enduring legacy. Other civilizations built taller towers, faster ships, brighter weapons, always looking to project their power, to show their strength. America had demonstrated a power that needed no projection, a strength that was most potent when it was not displayed. They had weaponized strategic ambiguity to its absolute degree. To fight them, you first had to make them care that you were fighting. And they had proven definitively that they might not. From that day forward, a new annotation appeared on all galactic charts marking Sol System. Next to Earth, it did not read military power, extreme, or caution, advised. It read, simply, sovereignty enforced via conceptual negation. It was a place where wars did not happen, not because peace was negotiated, but because the very idea of war could be switched off. The Tri-Corpus alliance disbanded shortly after, its foundational confidence shattered. The 12-minute war entered history not as a war, but as a punctuation mark, a full stop declared unilaterally in the middle of someone else's sentence. And the galaxy learned that the most powerful entity is not the one that wins every fight, but the one that decides conclusively and without fanfare which fights are not worth recognizing at all. The lesson was clear. You could arm yourself against a lion, a dragon, a god. But how do you arm yourself against a force that treats your entire existence as a weapon, as a system error, and concludes the conflict before you even understand it has begun?